When the avoidant realizes you've had enough, the 5 hidden stages of panic, they never admit. There is a very specific moment in an avoidant's life that almost no one talks about. It's not when you argue. It's not when you cry. It's not even when you threaten to leave. The real panic begins when you stop trying, when your energy shifts, when the emotional pull they were used to quietly disappears. Avoidant individuals are deeply attuned to distance, but only when they are the ones creating it. The second they sense that you are no longer chasing, no longer waiting, no longer emotionally organizing your world around them, something inside them destabilizes. This is the moment they realize you've had enough. And from that realization unfolds a very predictable, very human, and very uncomfortable sequence of internal reactions. These are the 5 stages of panic an avoidant goes through, often silently, often unconsciously, when they realize the dynamic has permanently changed. Stage 1. Confusion disguised as calm. At first, the avoidant doesn't panic. They rationalize. They tell themselves you're just busy, moody, or needing space. Avoidants are masters of emotional minimization, especially when it protects them from vulnerability. On the surface, they may appear calm, even relieved. After all, less emotional demand feels safer. But underneath that calm is something unsettling. Your absence doesn't feel the way it used to. Your silence isn't triggering their usual sense of relief. Instead, it feels off. They check their phone more than they admit. They replay past conversations in their head, not emotionally, but analytically. Did I say something? Did something change? They won't reach out yet. They won't show concern. But the confusion has already begun. The emotional control they believed they had starts to wobble, and they don't understand why. Stage 2. Irritation and subtle resentment. Once confusion lingers, it transforms into irritation. This stage is dangerous because it looks like detachment, but it's actually anxiety wearing armor. The avoidant begins to feel challenged, not by confrontation, but by your independence. Your emotional neutrality feels like rejection, even if you never said a word. They may think things like, so now they're the distant one? Or why does this suddenly bother me? This irritation often comes out as dismissiveness. They may become colder, shorter, or even passive-aggressive if contact happens. Internally, they feel a loss of control. The role reversal is deeply uncomfortable. Avoidants feel safest when they are needed but not required, desired but not depended on. When you emotionally step back, you unknowingly disrupt the balance that allowed them to stay regulated. Stage 3. Anxiety spikes and monitoring begins. This is where real panic quietly enters. The avoidant starts watching. They may check your social media. They may casually ask mutual friends about you. They may reread old messages, not out of longing, but out of fear. This is the stage where they realize something important. You are no longer emotionally available in the same way. You are no longer predictable, and unpredictability is terrifying to an avoidant. Their attachment system, which had been dormant, suddenly activates. They begin to feel a low-grade anxiety they don't know how to name. They won't call it missing you. They won't call it fear of loss. Instead, they'll frame it as curiosity, concern, or annoyance. But internally, they are grappling with the possibility that they miscalculated, that you were not as endlessly patient as they assumed. Stage 4. Testing the bond without fully reaching. At this stage, the avoidant may break silence, but not in the way you expect. They don't suddenly open up or apologize. Instead, they send a neutral message, a casual check-in, a vague, hey, how have you been? This is not connection, it's a test. They are checking whether the door is still open, whether your emotional energy is still accessible. What terrifies them most here is not rejection, but confirmation. If you respond calmly, briefly, or with emotional neutrality, their panic deepens. Not because you're being cold, but because you're being grounded. Your lack of emotional urgency sends a powerful signal. The dynamic has shifted. They may pull back again after this, trying to regain internal control, but something inside them has already changed. They now know they no longer have unlimited access to you. Stage 5. Internal collapse or delayed grief. This final stage doesn't always happen immediately. Sometimes it arrives weeks or months later. This is when the avoidant truly feels the loss, not as drama, but as emptiness. They may date others. They may stay busy. They may convince themselves they've moved on. But nothing feels the same. The emotional safety they once took for granted is gone. The connection that required no emotional risk from them is no longer available. This is when regret can surface, not always as remorse, but as a quiet reckoning. They realize they lost someone who was emotionally present, patient, and consistent because they never believed that loss was possible. This is the stage where they may attempt a deeper return, or where the grief finally settles in if the door remains closed. And here's the most important thing to understand. I want you to pause for a moment and really let this sink in, because the most important part of this entire conversation was never about the avoidant. It was about you, about the moment you stopped abandoning yourself just to keep someone else comfortable, about the quiet strength it takes to say internally, I've reached my limit, without needing to announce it, explain it, or justify it to anyone. When you reach that place, something powerful happens. You stop reacting. You stop waiting. You stop measuring your worth by someone else's emotional availability. And that shift is not loud, but it is irreversible. If you recognize yourself in this story, understand this. The confusion, the detachment, the sudden calm you felt wasn't weakness. It was clarity. It was your nervous system finally choosing safety over hope. And that is not something to undo. Too many people mistake emotional exhaustion for failure, when in reality, it's often the final stage of emotional maturity. You didn't give up too soon. You stayed long enough to know the cost of staying. And here's something most people won't tell you. When an avoidant panics, it doesn't mean they've suddenly learned how to love you better. Panic is not transformation. Awareness is not accountability. What matters now is not whether they reach out, reflect, or even regret. It's whether you go back to shrinking yourself to make someone else feel secure. Because the real test of growth isn't how they respond, it's how you do. You don't need closure from someone who avoided depth. You don't need validation from someone who struggled with intimacy. The closure came the moment you stopped trying to prove your value. The healing began when you chose peace over potential. And if they do come back later with explanations, emotions, or promises, remember this. You are no longer the person who waits to be chosen. You are the person who chooses. So if you're in that quiet space right now, where things feel still, unfamiliar, and strangely calm, trust it. That's not emptiness. That's room. Room for relationships that don't require emotional guessing games. Room for connection that feels safe, mutual, and grounded. And most importantly, room for yourself. If this video helped you make sense of what you experienced, take a moment to like it, share it with someone who might need this clarity, and subscribe for more deep psychological insights on attachment, healing, and emotional strength. Your awareness is your power, and this chapter ends with you standing firmly in it.